I lived in Kaz, and I did major in biology, but the college's environmental classes were almost non-existent. I went on to get my master's in resource planning and enjoy a very satisfying environmental career. I don't think I encountered much real sexism in the research world, and I was very fortunate that after my second child, I was able to continue to work part-time for 18 years. And today I volunteer with several environmental groups. I don't think of myself particularly as a feminist, though one of my favorite groups is called True Blue Women, and it works to bring the progressive voice to very conservative Kansas politics. I think of myself mostly as an advocate for living a more sustainable, smaller carbon lifestyle. So today, my living situation is somewhat unconventional. Amidst a well-heeled suburban community, I have 2 paying house guests, housemates, you might say, a Chinese woman and a Russian man. I support local agriculture and local economies. I'm learning to raise vegetables and preserve food. I walk or bike to grocery store. I drive a hybrid when I must. And I shop thrift stores and estate sales almost exclusively. My long-term finances are a concern, and I hope to return to paid volunteer work soon, but for now, I'm leading an authentic life, and for me, I've never been happier or more at peace with my values.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Now we'll turn to Maura.
I'm Maura Smith from the class of 1980, and I'm having a couple of my typical Wellesley experiences as we speak. So I'm thrilled to be surrounded by such interesting and articulate and passionate women. And I also feel like the one who kind of slipped in, so. That said, I'm intimidated, and it's intimidating to actually speak or be asked to speak for your generation. So we can only do what we can do, and I'll tell you a little about my experience at Wellesley and since. So I came to Wellesley in 1976. I was here from 76 to 80. I stayed here the entire time. In that era, people did start traveling and going to other colleges so that they could meet boys. They went to other universities around the world so they could meet boys and maybe learn a new language. I stayed on campus. I was a poli-sci major. I started by living in Davis. And I'm joined today by one of my closest friends, Dory Pizzella, who I met in Davis, and we're still friends today. I studied poli-sci while I was here and was lucky enough to go on the Washington internship. That was in its infancy as well in the 70s. I think that my generation at Wellesley came at a really unique time. So we were the beneficiaries, obviously, of the women's movement. We grew up in our formative years in high school thinking that we could do whatever we wanted to do. We really bought into the women's movement, I think, hook, line, and sinker. We were very sure that we could compete with men and that we should have all of the options and opportunities that men had traditionally had. It was a challenging time in that a lot of forces were coming to bear in that era, including the economy. So although I think a lot of us believe that we were preparing ourselves for a career because we wanted to work, it turns out we were really one of the first generations of women who really had to work. So while we were here at Wellesley, the economy was really tanking. I think a lot of you remember, I think it was in '74, waiting in lines for gas. All of a sudden, inflation was double digit. Unemployment for the first time since post-war America was edging up towards 10%. So when we graduated in 1980, we were actually entering a really challenging world and a very competitive world with men. So we thought we were going to go after the same jobs that they were going after, and it couldn't have been a worse time. It was really interesting for me to read Gail Collins' book because even though I lived through a lot of what she discusses, or I lived through all of what she discusses from 1960 to the present, over time it sort of fades. And so my understanding of my graduation from Wellesley was that I was just one of these underachievers who didn't find a job. Well, it turns out most of us didn't find a job because there weren't really jobs to be had. And so my classmates at the time were often choosing then to go immediately on to graduate school. And in that era, we really were, I think, trying to follow in traditionally male roles. And so most of my classmates' aspirations were to go to law school, to medical school, or in fact, we were one of the first peaks in women going for an MBA, was of that generation. On campus in that era of 76 to 80, there were lots of recruiters from Wall Street. They were the typical recruiters on campus, offering jobs. For someone like myself who didn't want to pursue a career in business, it was very challenging to find any kind of career services on campus. We were also, I think, a generation that was very interested in political issues, so still, you know, the residue of the women's movement was on campus. Abortion rights were really something we talked about. Apartheid and helping other folks in other countries really achieve civil rights was really something we cared about. But I would not say that we were a generation that was really going to take the risks and, you know, have a sit-in or march. I mean, I think we had maybe a march on the president's house once, but we were really trying to play it safe because we wanted to get a job and we knew we needed to get a job. So that was a force that really tempered, I think, our experience here on campus.
Great, thank you so much. Donna, go ahead.
I'm Donna Dodson. I graduated in 1990 from Wellesley College. I'm really honored to be part of this panel. I was on campus from 86 to 90. Nan Cohen was the president then. I think Barbara Bush and Raisa Gorbachev were our graduation speakers. I resonate a lot with what Maura said. When I was registering just for reunion here, it was in the living room that I interviewed in when I came for my admission interview, and I just I had the same panic attack. I went to a public high school. This was very totally out of anything that I knew, and but my mother really wanted me to come here, so I did, and I came in pre-med, and I did all of my science requirements, and was working at Newton Wellesley and Beth Israel, and about halfway through I decided I didn't want to go into medicine. I wanted to go into the Peace Corps, and I went to the Peace Corps thing and said, oh, my whole plan, I'm gonna go to Africa and be a doctor and save the world. That was kind of like where I was coming from, and they were like, well, everyone thinks we need doctors. That's not really what we need. We really need engineers. And I was like, to build bridges and, irrigation and everything. I was like, oh my God, I don't have any of those skills. I was like completely crushed. So I kind of floundered for, many years after that. And finally got into a career as an artist. And that's what I'm currently doing. My mother, again, was like, you can do anything you want, but you cannot be a teacher, a secretary, or a nurse. Those are the only three choices I had, and you can do anything you want, but you can't do those three choices. So I think I knew I wanted to do something kind of groundbreaking and non-traditional, and that was just kind of like what I left with, this drive. And I think what a lot of people said when I came here was that a lot of women leaders had gone to all-female colleges, and that was like a big message. I think Wellesley sent 9 or 10 buses to Washington, D.C. when I was here to march for women's rights. They had shanties built on the common to protest apartheid. I mean, it was a very political time between 86 and 90, and I was a part of that. And the thing to do was double major in poli-sci and econ and go to Wall Street and become an investment banker, and I had no idea what that meant at the time. But that was, I guess it was like the high-powered feeling you could do whatever you want. And so I really tried to live up to that ideal.
Thank you. And last but not least, Megan.
My name is Megan Black-Uy. I graduated in 2000. I was at Wellesley from 1996 to 2000. I was a poli-sci major as well, and a student athlete on the cross-country team. I lived in Davis, McAfee, Claflin, and Tower. Some of those in the space of 1 year. And I also had a very hard time leaving Wellesley and served as an assistant coach for the cross-country team for 3 years after I graduated. I currently live in Somerville now with my husband Anthony and our 2 children, AJ and Christopher. They are 3 and 1, and they're here today. I am currently a stay-at-home mom. So you want to talk about someone who feels like they slid in on a panel. You know, I think it's been a long time maybe that a stay-at-home mom has spoken on a panel at Wellesley College. So, professionally, I am trained as a licensed mental health counselor. I hold a master's in mental health and behavioral medicine from Boston University Medical School. My primary work has been with adolescents struggling with eating disorders. When I came to Wellesley, Hillary Clinton was First Lady, Madeleine Albright was Secretary of State, and the New York Times in the last year had published an article entitled, "How to Succeed in Business? Go to Wellesley." So the message that I took in from Wellesley at that particular point in time was, individually I felt a great deal of pressure to succeed, and that success meant not just making a difference, but making kind of a global impact. You know, I felt like we all had to go out and be Hillary Clinton or Madeleine Albright and that sort of thing. The motto held very strong, I think, for us in our class, not to be served, but to serve. And when I talk to fellow alums from the class of 2000, that's still what I hear. No matter what people are doing, there's an element of service in almost everything that people are doing right now. We were part of and are part of a generation that takes feminism for granted. We even talked about post-feminism. Somebody here, I see Jen Gilchrist and I see Rachel McGraw, and one of them had a bumper sticker on their door that said, "I'll be a post-feminist when feminism has succeeded." And I loved that bumper sticker because I did feel like in some ways we were taking so much for granted of where we had been, where we had gone. But we were very caught up in multiculturalism at the time. That was sort of the zeitgeist on campus at that particular time. We were working very hard to create a very honest endeavor towards true multiculturalism, whatever that meant. And so we could get a little over the edge and hysterical at times, and we could come back to center again. But we were also very fortunate to be at a time of an economic boom. It was before the dot-com bust. It was when investment banking was considered to be a great thing to go into. And when we were graduating, I think, people were getting flown out to interviews. Graduating seniors getting flown out to interviews and wined and dined to work at these, big companies. That was unheard of even a year later. So it was a very interesting time that way. But another thing that stands out to me at my time at Wellesley was the focus on forging intimate relationships. Establishing partnerships with people if we were there yet, but also forging relationships with women unlike any that we'd probably had in high school as high school girls, learning to be friends with women and to work together in that greater competition outside and beyond campus.
Thank you.